Welcome to Shooting Spaces, a real estate photography podcast. Discussions on gear, technique, industry news, and interviews with the best in the business. Now, here are your hosts, Rich Baum and Brian Berkowitz.
Hello, and welcome to Shooting Spaces. I'm Brian from New York.
And Rich Baum from Sacramento, California. And I'd like to say it's been a whirlwind week out there, man. You were in the big nor'easter in New York. I saw some footage of the storms. Unbelievable. Did you fare well, Brian? Are you okay?
I did not fare as well as I would have liked. I had a little water in the basement, but you know, you get through it and you move on, and that is life living in New York, up and down weather.
Probably nobody was shooting real estate during the storm.
No, I don't think anyone was leaving there. I mean, it's funny. We spoke that morning, if you remember, and I was coming from a shoot, but I had a really quick shoot that morning, and I headed home and cuddled under the covers for the rest of the day.
Did you have a good time with your kids? That's the most important thing.
That is the most important thing. Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. And I spent last week, I had my first stop on the Rich Baum Tricks and Tips real estate photography workshop in Auburn, California. And we had an absolutely fantastic time and 2 really long days, but everybody had a great time, learned so much. And we also had a little rain. So it turned out pretty good, though. But I was certainly was a great opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you about it because although we release episodes every week, obviously we don't, we usually chat a few times a week. And last week we didn't chat because of your workshop. And it feels like it's been a couple of weeks since we spoke. But I heard the workshop went well and it was pretty successful all around. So
yeah, it was great. And we're doing another one in a week again in Auburn and then up to Seattle. So I'll be a busy boy. But I want to get into tonight's podcast, and I'm really excited because I have a friend of mine, and I can actually say that because when I was in Australia this winter during Christmas, I went to all over the place, but one place I stopped was Brisbane, Australia, on the eastern coast of Australia, and I happened to ring up a friend of mine, Darryl Stringer. And Darryl Stringer's, Darryl's been doing real estate photography for a long time, and he was kind enough to come on to our podcast. So I want to welcome Darryl Stringer to the Shooting Spaces podcast. Hi, Darryl.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you very much. It's really, really good to be here.
Yeah, boy, that was sure fun. We went out for a photo walk on the water in Brisbane, and I got to tell you. That's a beautiful, beautiful city. I didn't see much of it, but I loved Australia, every part of Australia I was at, but I really, really liked the water front. And I took out my Fuji camera I was using and took some pictures of night lights. And we had carousels and Chinese buildings, and it was great.
Yeah. It was a really good night. What I thought was interesting from a photography point of view was that when you're trying to look at it with someone else for the first time, you do see those things a little bit differently. And you sort of appreciate your home city, and you're seeing angles that you really kind of just ignored before because it's just part of the furniture. So yeah, it's a really interesting experience to look through someone else's eyes at buildings and the kind of structures we were shooting there.
Well, I still love photography and love walking around, and I'll tell you, it's great. As we all are talking about, I mean, a lot of people in the groups are talking about it, and I believe in it. But get together with fellow photographers when you're in their neighborhood, and just make a little effort and get together with different people, and you'd learn so much. I really recommend it. It was a lot of fun.
For sure.
So, Darryl, I would really like it if you would just introduce yourself, as I'm sure you've done many times, and just tell us what you are and what you do, and your little bit about your photography system.
Yeah, sure. So I'm as you mentioned, I'm in Brisbane. I started here working in real estate photography back in 1998. We were still using rolls of film back then.
Wow.
And they were tricky days. So you'd sort of have to race off to the photo lab and drop it into the 1 hour place and wait around for an hour.
How many rolls did you shoot on an average shoot?
We were generally going through one roll of film per shoot. So sort of 24 to maybe 36 on a bigger one. Get the film processed and then deliver it to the real estate office. It was hard. So really nice.
No compositing, huh?
No. So
no window pulls.
No, you had to do the whole thing in camera. There was no other option. And then so when digital came out, I picked up a Canon 10D in 2003. And that was some special piece of kit when you
How many megapixels was that? 3?
I think it was a little bit more than 3. But
Okay.
you're pushing me to remember the specs specifically. But it was great. I mean, and then of course it was like, we can do things with this. We can do some layering. I don't have to get it in all in one shot. What happens if I layer it up? So I did that for photography business until about 2015. I had multiple staff working for me. We did I think I worked out about 2.7 million in turnover through the years. And now what I do is I run a system called the Real Estate Photography System, and I help real estate photographers get more clients and build more profitable businesses, working with photographers across the US, Australia, Canada, Europe.
What's the name of? We'll say it at the end too, and it'll be in the show notes. But what's the name of the website?
What I do is
Or the URL?
Yeah, what I do is realestatephotography.com.
And how just go there and it's self-explanatory, be able to find your information.
Yeah, and they'll be able to get access to some little free videos that I've got. And then they can also hear about if they're interested. They can submit an application and join up if they're interested. But I mean, I'm like you guys, I'm trying to help photographers, boost what we can do as an industry. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think we can do a lot together. So trying to help photographers out who often really struggle with the things to do with marketing and pricing. So trying to help them a lot with that.
That's something Rich and I talk about a lot because, if you go to different Facebook groups, everyone is always talking about technique and lenses and what they're using, lighting and all this. And no one's really talking about the business side and the marketing side of things. And Rich and I have spoken about this a few times on different podcasts, how we want to, focus some episodes just on that. And that it looks like essentially that's what you're offering to people. That maybe I'm wrong, but not as much technique, but a lot of the business and the marketing and how to really build your business and get it out there. Is that correct, or am I off?
No, absolutely. Yeah, we a lot of photographers they can pick up the photography side, pretty well. Obviously, what we do is different to how you might be shooting portraits or some other fields, but they can get those skills, but then try to work out how you, first of all, become known amongst your target clients, whether they be real estate agents or builders or hotels or architects or whoever. And then also, how do you price yourself right so that you're actually profitable and you're not just busy and getting lots of clients, but you're not actually being profitable with those activities. So that's the really important thing I push for.
Darryl, let me ask you, because I just went through this last week for my workshops. How do you deal with, now you're in Australia, and I'm sure you probably have some Australian clients, but I know that you've got clients all over the world. How do you, first of all, when you are contacted at the beginning, someone wants to find out more about you, do you contact them and do you set up a Skype call? And then I want to know, how do you, do you research their neighborhood, their territory, and find out what the going prices are? But how do you deal with? Because I had to deal with people and trying to help them, say a ballpark number of how much to charge or what to do. But it's so hard because everywhere is different. How do you find out that you can find a middle ground and really help people?
Yeah, so the first thing I try and do once someone joins my program is we have about a 30-minute to a 60-minute one-to-one chat like this, and I just ask them questions, and I'm busy typing notes down in my document here, and what I do afterwards is then I'll go over what they've said, and I'll work out a bit of a plan to work on with them. Once I understand their situation and their context a little bit better, In terms of finding a price, look, it is different in pretty much in every city, but the same rules apply in that you've got to be profitable. So it's a matter of working out what each individual photographer needs to reach their target. So one thing I like to work through is to come up with a daily dollar target for each photographer. So what we try and do is we work out what are their expenses, and they have to be really detailed on that, and what's the salary that they want to be earning. And we add those two numbers together to give us what we want as an annual sales target. Then we work out how many days per year they want to be working. So if it's Monday to Friday, so 5 times how many weeks do they anticipate working, and that's going to change a little bit because if they're working in an area that gets snowed out, through the winter, then there may be 1 month, 2 months, or something where there isn't a lot of work, and they've got to factor that in, and therefore they have to put everything into that other 10 months of the year. So how many days will they be working per year? And then we just do our annual sales divided by the number of working days per year to give us a daily dollar target. And then once we know what that figure is, then we can start to work on how long does it take them to do a shoot, and how many shoots can they do in a day to work out at least a minimum amount. So if a photographer says that they want to be making, let's say, $300 per day, and they're charging, $75 per shoot, and they can only do 2 shoots a day because it takes them so long to work on site and then go back into their office and do all of the editing, the numbers are never going to work at that. So that's where we just have to review either we've got to change your pricing and then market you really, really well to get you those jobs, or we have to cut down on the amount of time that it's taken them to do that shooting and editing so that they can get the 5 or 6 jobs a day that they really need to be doing.
6 jobs a day.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Some do it. I know they fly through, but I don't know how they could do that.
Well, I wanted to ask you, because again, I'm still I don't want to say I'm still high from the workshops, but it takes me about a week to kind of wind down, and I'm still my mind is going in circles with all the things we talked about, which is perfect for having you on. And what I wanted to bring up in a question, and hopefully I can ask this in the right way, but when a lot of people start out, and I'm sure you deal with because you're dealing with how to make your day, as I call it, and shooting. A lot of people might be starting out with HDR, and they're just shooting run and gun and blah blah blah, and then they will move up to maybe a HDR hybrid with a flash, and then they'll be maybe moving up to kind of what I'm doing, and where we're trying to do the taking a flash and an ambient and masking and trying to get, let's just say, trying to break into the higher end. What is your feeling? What do you tell people when somebody is in that situation where they've maybe been doing this for a while, and how do you transition people from doing more run and gun style to really doing more high-end work, and also in return also charging more money, but completely changing your business plan? What do you say to that?
I think that something like that there may be for those kinds of photographers. Maybe there's a transition period, maybe where either they're offering the 2 levels of photography, and I know some photographers do that quite well. Some choose not to because maybe they decide that there's too much competing in terms of different brands, and they just want to make the whole switch across. But maybe for some it might be appropriate to offer 2 levels where you've got a basic run and gun service, and then you've got your higher end service. Otherwise, if they just want to make a clear jump across to doing that higher end quality of photography where they're using multiple flashes and multiple exposures, and taking longer on site, sometimes it's just a matter of completely changing your pricing structure and then explaining the benefits of that, and using really good communication with your clients and with your prospects to explain the benefits that's going to come to them as the client. Because if we talk in photographic terms and saying, I'm going to start using 3 580 flashes around, and this and that. Well, the client, they don't know what you're talking about. But if we start talking to the client about how this is going to help you stand out in your marketplace, and I'm here, I want to see you improve as a client in terms of the number of listings you get, and start talking about the benefits for the client, and then you're better placed for them to understand why your prices have jumped, $50 or $100 or more.
That's how I sort of transitioned in a way. The first method you kind of told us where you have two pricing models. And when I was doing that transition to the higher end homes, the first thing I would ask is, what's the sale price of the home? And that would kind of, clue me into which pricing structure I have to give the client. And that helped me kind of transition till I got to that point. And there does come that point where you have to do this, unfortunately, where you have to say, okay, I'm going to go with my higher pricing model. I'm going to throw the other one away, and I'm going to, lose a few of the jobs, but it's for the greater good. And, I'll start, my numbers will start going up, and that's, knock on wood, that's how it worked for me. So.
Yeah, look, I think one thing that a lot of photographers don't seem to understand is the impact of running with high prices. And they don't understand that, you might lose some clients, but if your prices are significantly higher, you can still be better off even if you lose 20% of those clients that you previously had. So you sort of work through and do some numbers and go, well, if I'm doing 10 shoots at the moment at my low price, what am I going to be doing? How many shoots do I need to be making that at my high price? And it might only be like maybe 6 or 7 5 shoots. You might go up significantly. So that can make a really big difference. We all go, I don't want to lose my clients because I've got higher prices now. But it doesn't necessarily work that way. You can lose some clients, and some of those clients might be really good to lose. If they're really difficult to work with, it's good to, let them go and then move on to that higher quality client base.
Let them go. I like to think of it as I fire them. No, I don't do it a lot, but every now and then I guess I'll say it from now on. It sounds better. I'd have to let them go.
I think there's also a psychology to it when you're pricing the way you are, because I know I've lost jobs because I underbid and the clients didn't take me seriously because I was too low. And that's during my transition time when I was trying to go after this higher end work, and maybe I gave a lower end price and I didn't end up getting it. And I know they went with other people that were more expensive than me. And I think it's simply because they felt, well, this guy is really cheap. He can't be that good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very true. I have many times the same situations, and we all know that, that's the hardest part of the business. I think for me is the pricing and knowing how to bid. And actually, I tell everybody that my wife came up with a really good one. Darryl, what do you think about? She's like, well, I said, well, I don't know what to charge. It was a national company and this and that. She says, well, have you asked them what their budget is? What do you say about that?
Look, I think that can be really helpful when you can get it out of them. If they're willing to talk,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking here about real estate agents, but also about architects and builders and others. Sometimes they want to reveal that, and sometimes they don't. I was chatting with a commercial photographer friend of mine who asked that question to a company that was asking for a shoot, and he submitted a budget, a fee pretty much right on what they were prepared to pay. Another photographer friend of his submitted a quote for the exact same project, and he kept his price. He didn't know what the budget was. He didn't ask about that. His price, I think, was $3,000 cheaper. And they went with the higher priced photographer because they knew that they could deliver what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that goes back to what I was just saying. With sometimes when you're too cheap, you might lose the bid because you look like the cheap guy.
Yeah, one thing I like to push is the idea that great photography is no substitute for bad numbers. So if you don't have your pricing right, it doesn't matter how fantastic you are as a shooter. You're not going to have a profitable business, and you're going to be able to last. So you've got to get both things happening together and working together. If you're going to have higher numbers, then you've got to have great photography to back it up at the same time.
Yeah. And let me ask you, do you find, because I almost think there's two types of people out there, and And there's a lot of photographers that I guess haven't really committed, or maybe it's just that they're not sure of themselves, or I really also it is just maybe they're just not great business people. And when we're dealing with education, as you and I are, Darryl, I just find that the people that take advantage of what I have to offer are really the ones that they have business sense, they have committed, they're usually older, maybe in the 40 plus range, 35, 40 plus range, but there's some younger people too. But I just find there's too many younger people that just like look at it with blinders on and don't really look at the big picture, don't look at all of the weigh the pros and cons and go through all the steps. How do you try and convince somebody that, you really got to take a leap of faith. You've got to really believe in yourself, and you got to want to do it. And
look, there are a lot of people who get into this simply because they love shooting and they love taking photos, and that's really important because that's obviously a really big part of what we do. But I feel that they also need to love being in business for themselves and all of the responsibilities and the stress, and at the same time, the wonderful sense of achievement that you get from running your own business. So being passionate about photography is one thing, but you got to love like looking at your numbers. You got to love marketing and building up marketing systems and working, sending out mailings and doing social media posts and analyzing your data and what's working and what's not working, and testing and measuring of your marketing systems and the whole thing. You've got to be like really keen on that. And if you're not, it can become really frustrating, and often those people end up sort of jumping out of the game fairly quickly just because they find it doesn't really suit them, and they're perhaps better off working, just working for someone else where they can just rock up, do their 8-hour days or 10-hour days or whatever, and then go home again and not have to worry about it. But for those who just love that wonderful blend we have between being creative and running our own business, this is a good game.
What's your favorite part of the business there, Brian? What do you like all the things Darryl was mentioning, or do you have a hard time with some?
I mean, obviously I love shooting the most. That's why we get into this.
I just like the money. That's what I say.
But yeah, there is something to running my own business. I mean, I've had personally just over, since I was probably 22, I started my first business, and I've probably had 6 or 7 businesses since then. So, and I do have side business also that has nothing to do with photography on the side of this. And I love being an entrepreneur, and I love, creating something from nothing and trying to build it. And, that is one of my businesses. I actually build profitable e-commerce sites and then sell them. So, which has nothing to do with photography. I just kind of do that on the side. But, it's along the same lines as being an entrepreneur. I like, starting the business, marketing, going out, getting the clients, and with the photography, I'm doing what I also love together with it. So being able to go out, find my clients, shoot for them, which is what I love, and then deliver them these images is exactly what I want to do. Do I love sitting down at the computer at night and sending invoices to my clients? No. Who loves doing that? But it's part of it, and you got to do it. And when you send an invoice out and the next morning I have an email that they paid it online, there's the satisfaction. So,
well, I gotta say the hardest part for me is the invoicing, and it doesn't take very long, but it's kind of like I drag my heels doing it, but you got to do it or you won't get paid.
Let me ask you, Darryl, because I'm on your website now, and I'm just curious. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your actual program, the different modules you have, and kind of go through as far as what somebody who subscribes to your program can get out of it? What are they going to experience?
Okay, so what we do is I provide a series of training modules. I've got over 200 up there now. We do a a weekly group coaching call as well. Actually, we do it 2 times a week to make sure everyone can get there at some point. This week, I've got number 141 coming up, and people who are in the program can go and have a listen to all of those 140 sort of 1 hour chats just like this where we go into detail. But what we also cover...
Wow, that's 140 hours of content.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, well, that's just the group coaching calls, and then there's all of the other training modules as well.
How many people are in your group when you have a group training call? How many? Give us a scenario.
Yeah, in terms of on the live call, we have fairly small numbers because it's really tricky, like working with a global audience, making it at a time when people can be there. So everyone's sort of busy shooting and editing and that kind of thing. So we'd only get small numbers on the live call, and then everyone will have a listen to it one sort of evening or something when they're free and they're not busy doing other things.
What country is the majority of your clients from?
Yeah, look, I'd probably have the most in the US, and we've got quite a lot of states, like from east to west. But I only work with one person in each area. So I only work with one photographer in a certain city, or sort of.
Is that by design or just it happens that way?
Yeah, no, that's what I intend to do. I didn't want to be competing against myself and be advising 2 photographers on how to compete against another one that I'm working with. So I'll have a photographer that I'm working with, and I'll have other people wanting from the same town wanting to join. I say, look, I can't work with you at the moment, but maybe another time. So in terms of content, pricing is a really big part of what we do. So like, for example, one thing I have them set up is I've created an Excel document where they can track all of their numbers that they're doing in terms of sales each week. They can analyze all of their expenses and stay on top of that and track their expenses, and then start to work out what they need to be charging for their different photography packages. What do they need to charge for video and things like that? You can't do that unless you know your numbers inside out. So having it all together on an Excel document, and this might be something, people listening to this might be able to work on themselves.
I need to work on it.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's so...
Take your course.
It's so important to know, because like when I was shooting for many years, I wasn't keeping track of my numbers very well. I was really busy and it felt like I should be doing okay, but I didn't really know my numbers well enough. And then it was only once I got them all written down and analyzed, and then I could see, hang on, this shoot is okay, but this shoot here, I'm spending way too much time doing that and I'm not charging enough for it. So then I knew that I had to make those changes to my pricing. But it also showed me, by tracking how many of my different types of shoots that I'm doing, what's really working well, and what shoots aren't so popular. And so once you know those numbers, then you can go, well, hang on, I really need to be pushing this thing a whole lot more. I didn't know that I was doing so many of it. It didn't feel like I was doing a lot of it, but obviously clients around here love it. So let's get in and do a little bit more marketing of that particular service. So tracking our numbers is really important. And then the other big thing that we do is marketing. So writing of scripts, writing of phone calls and what to say when you're cold calling, writing up of all the follow-up steps that you make after making that first engagement or first contact with a client, and laying out like a 13 contact point kind of system so that you can stay in contact and follow up with each one of those inquiries. Because a lot of photographers, they'll get an inquiry from, say, a real estate agent, and they'll say, the real estate agent will say to them, hey, can I just get your price list? And the photographer says, yeah, sure, I'll send you an email. And then that's it. There's no follow-up to find out, well, did you get it? Can I answer any questions for you? The next month, hey, how are you going? What are you up to? How's that listing going? That constant follow-up process is so important, but a lot of photographers don't have time to do that because they're busy shooting and editing. So what I do is I write a lot of that content and material for them. So it's a copy and paste, and out it goes. Makes it a lot easier for them.
And the clients respect it. And we call it, I don't know about New York, but in California, we call it a tickle call. You call that tickle call, Brian?
No, I've never heard that before.
Really?
Yeah.
That was my wife taught me that. She's the business one in this crazy relationship, but she's taught me so many things that It's just basic business, though. It's really so fundamental and key. And it's amazing. So many people don't really understand it, and I don't. I mean, I understand it because I've been doing it forever and ever. But so many people, especially the people just getting into this, they don't know what they don't know, as I always say, and they don't really understand simple business. But you've hit everything right on the nail, on the head, where you've got to do certain things, and it's just imperative.
What are your thoughts, Darryl, on based off what you said and the constant follow-ups? What are your thoughts about automating a system like that? Or do you like to go out and just naturally write out that email and send it yourself? And
yeah, so I guess in terms of automating, you're probably referring to an email system follow-up.
Exactly. So for instance, if I got a lead today and I send them my price list, I can go to I don't know, I don't do this automated, but I'm just thinking as you tell me, there has to be obviously some automated softwares or services out there where I can just go and put in their email address and say, okay, I sent them a price list on this and this date. And then automatically 1 week later, it'll send out an email to them. And then automatically a month later, it'll send out another email to them. So you don't have to necessarily go in and remember to do that. And you put in all the content beforehand, and you have a more automated system to get all those point of contacts done for you.
Look, I think that's great from the photographer's end. I guess my only query then is how effective is it at the agent's end? Because I don't know, have you asked a real estate agent how many emails they get each day?
Oh yeah,
I have not personally, but I would imagine
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I was talking to one real estate agent friend, and they said they get sort of 100 to 200 emails per day. So it's really, really hard then for an email from a photographer to stand out in that. And not all agents respond well to emails. Some people prefer other forms. So like in the last group coaching call that I did with my team, we went through a multi-channel marketing campaign where email was part of that, but so were lots of other forms of communication, because the agent misses the email, they forget to reply, and they don't place a high value on an email-only marketing campaign as well. So what we find is you got to, as difficult as it is, and it does take a lot more work, because if we could automate it, that'd be awesome. I'd tick that box. But it's just a matter of actually putting that work into it, placing high value on that relationship. And if you value that relationship and value the I guess the long-term lifetime value of the customer. So we're not talking about just a one-off $150 shoot that we're trying to get here. We're talking about 3 years of monthly shoots, and that adds up really well. So it's worth investing that extra work, as difficult as it is, to use a variety of communication channels.
And there's nothing like face-to-face handshake. Those things are very valuable. And I think people now are really, I mean, everything's changed so much with social media, with Facebook. I mean, gosh, it drives me crazy. I now am doing correspondence via phone, via messaging, via email, via Facebook. I mean, Facebook Messenger is just really, and I have such a hard time with it, but I think that people still respect and appreciate the traditional. I know that on not every job, but quite often, I will send a invoice and a handwritten note, and that really means a lot, because less and less people do it. So I find it allows me to stand out, and allows me to people to see me possibly in a different light than all of the bombardment of those 100, 200 emails a day. So I believe in sometimes stepping back, and I also think that a lot of especially my agents, their majority of them are all in the mid 30s to 50s, and they're also battling all of these distractions of social media and things like that. So I think maybe step back and look at the old fashioned way too. Combine it. That seems to work for a lot of people, and me especially.
Yeah. I think people want to work with someone that they trust, and so whatever you can do to build up
reliability.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so important.
So you get them to trust you, and that's how you're going to get those photo shoots coming in.
Yeah. Darryl, I wanted to, you got me thinking. I wanted to ask you one question is, you had mentioned price list. I know people are always asking me, do I put my prices on my website or not? What's your answer for that?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to give away all your secrets of your system.
No, that's cool. The short answer is real estate prices I would, commercial photography prices I would not. So what I would say there is that for us as photographers, it's better for us not to have our prices up on our website, because then we can have people contacting us and, they call up and say, hey, Rich, what are your prices? And then who's called you, and you can follow up with them, and you can adapt and change your pricing if you needed to. If you're talking with a particular client, you can say, look, this sounds like a difficult shoot. I'm going to have to bump up my price for this one. And you can do all of that. From the point of view, though, of the customer, and I feel that that's where our focus needs to be in terms of how we service them. They want to know, or a lot of them want to know what your prices are before they reach out and contact you, because they're worried that you're going to do all of that follow-up with them, and they don't want that. They don't want those annoying phone calls and the emails and everything like that. They just want to know, hey, this guy does great work. Is he affordable? Is he either not too cheap or not too expensive? And so I think when I was running my business, I had my photography prices all over my website. And I would get a lot of bookings from both agents and homeowners because I had my prices up there, and they knew what they were going to get. They thoroughly researched everything and read through it all in more detail than I would sort of expect, because they weren't getting that when they'd go to other photographer websites.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great.
And I think that's important too, because I don't have my prices on my website. And now that I'm listening to you talk, I think that's something I'm actually going to consider, because I get so many calls of just people just fishing for prices, and they're not even serious and just wasting my time. And I feel like if, and I didn't really sit down and weigh the pros and cons, but just thinking after listening to you talk, I think having my prices up there, people or potential clients know what my prices are. And if somebody at that point reaches out to me, they know what my work is and they know where I'm priced at. So it turns from a cold lead into a hot lead right off the bat. For any potential calls, and it'll probably save me a significant amount of time with all these clients that are calling me that never call back once I, once I send them my pricing or even follow up. I don't hear from them again, because it happens a lot to me. And I am priced a little higher than a lot of the other photographers in my area, which I've said before. Which is probably why I don't hear back from them. But I feel like those that I do hear from are a lot hotter leads than the others.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think that's
great.
Right on, because people, if they're just calling you about the pricing, then if they're doing that, then that's probably their focus, and they're probably not ideal clients for you anyway. They're just shopping around to try to get the cheapest one they can. So if we can put our prices up, we can discount them straight away. And we get the people who value quality.
Yeah.
And when they book, then there's no argument there. They're saying, look, I want to work with Brian already. I love his work. His pricing I'm fine with. Let's just book the shoot in.
Yeah, well, for me, my original mindset was, well, I don't want my competition to see what I charge. But, I've kind of gotten over that at this point, clearly, because, I do this podcast and I tell people what I do, and it's not a secret. I'm gonna get the work that I get, and my clients are gonna come back to me, and other clients are gonna go to my competition, and it is what it is. And if I do what I do right and keep doing it, I'm gonna get work.
Great. Wow, some fantastic stuff.
Exactly. So Darryl, we were speaking earlier, and you told me that you want to make a special offer to some of our listeners on your program. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, look, I would, just for people listening, so don't tell anyone else. if they go to, I've set up a special page just for Shooting Spaces podcast. So they can go to www.buildaphotographybusines.com/shooting spaces. And I've just got a special deal there where they can get the second month membership free. So that can save them a fair bit. Whichever membership level they choose, the second month will be absolutely free for anyone. I won't run this offer for too long. So, sort of jump on it quickly. I might only run it for a week or two to make people move quickly. But yeah, I will offer the second month free, and they can try out my program and see what it's like. Even for the first month, we have a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. So if they join up and for whatever reason they decide that it's not right for them, they can get a full refund on that fee, or they can choose to stay on and love it and grow their business, and I'll walk with them all the way and help them to even better success.
Wow, great, Darryl. Thank you. I really you've really sparked my mind in so many ways with things to think about. And this whole business is business, and I think that it's a part that a lot of people want to. Everybody likes playing with cameras and tripods, but the business is still probably one of the most important parts of it. So thank you. That's great. Wonderful offer. Thank you.
And what we'll do is we'll put the link to both your main website and this special link for the special offer on the show notes. But why don't you just give our listeners both links one more time before we call it a night, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. So they can go to my regular site, www.realestatephotography.com, and that's where they can get my 4 videos that are free. They can watch through some of that where I talk about a little of what we've covered today and go into that in a bit more detail. Or they can go to my special offer for here, buildaphotographybusines.com/shooting spaces, and take a look at what we've got there.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes too. Excellent. Brian, why don't you, I want to say thank you very much, Darryl. Really a pleasure as always, and so informative. And Brian, why don't you take us out of here, and we got to get going. It's going a long time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure speaking with you, Darryl. Next time I'm out in Australia, I'll definitely look you up. I was there in 2003, actually, with my Nikon FM10 35 millimeter, and I actually have some of those pictures all around my house. So
cool.
But we thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit of your knowledge, and there's a lot more for people to learn from you. So hopefully they take advantage of this offer and look you up.
Yeah, thanks very much. I had a great time. You guys have been terrific. So well done. Good job.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Darryl.
Just like always, we want to remind everyone to subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and hope you enjoy listening. Spread the word. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up.
Don't forget the Ask the Guys. We've actually had a little bit of traction on that little thing. You can record your questions for us, a 90-second recording, and put your business in there, ask your question, and we will play it back on the air when we get around to some Ask the Guys podcasts. So that's
Rich, we got to get on that, Rich. We have like 6 or 7 questions on the
I know. I'm so stoked. So great. Well, thank you. And Brian, great as always talking to you. Darryl, thank you so much. And I'm Rich Baum from Sacramento, California, saying I'm out of here.
This has been Shooting Spaces, a real estate photography podcast. Subscribe to the show and don't forget to leave us a review. You can also follow Rich and Brian on social media and at their website, shootingspacespodcast.com.